So Amélie Bonet, she's an independent type designer and font engineer. She's based in Berlin, Germany. She has a passion for index scripts, which she got during her time at the MATD program in Reading and while working in London. So she's worked on projects in Bengali, Cyrillic, Devanagari, Georgian, Greek, Tamil, and Odia. And today she's going to be giving a presentation on the topic of creating an Odia font. So thank you, Amélie. I think we will start your video.
Thank you. Hi, this is Amélie Bonet. I'm here today to talk about how to produce Odia font. Before starting the talk, I would like to thank the ATypI team and the TypeText team to have invited me to present during this online conference. So yeah, creating an Odia font. Why am I talking about this today? I was commissioned back in 2019 to recreate the font Noto San Odia. The font has been already created in 2 different styles, but this time the job was to create something completely new and fresh with 3 different widths and 5 different weights. Looking at the scope of the project, I have been working with Sol Matas, and we've been developing together this font family. We already gave a talk during the Type Weekend conference. You can see this talk online. It's on YouTube. Just type the title, just the all of us, and you will find us. We are talking about how collaboration is very useful for this sort of project, because after all, a lot of people were involved in this great project. So yeah, let's go back to the production side of things, which I was very much involved in. So yeah, creating an Odia font, but what is exactly Odia? Odia looks like this. Odia is a language and a writing system. It is spoken by approximately 35 million people in India, and 4 million are using it also as a second language. Odia is mainly used in the Odisha state, which is on the northern eastern part of India. It is surrounded by Bengali to the northeast corner, and by Devanagari on the west northern part mainly. In comparison, so Odia speakers are roughly 40 million users, speakers, writers. In comparison, Greek is used by 30 million, so that's approximately a third of it. And yeah, it means that although it's a minority script in India, it is nevertheless a lot of people concerned by this script and language. Yeah, and in comparison, just to, yeah, that's the craziness of India. I guess everything is very big. Devanagari is used by 477 million people across Nepal and India. It's huge. So yeah, all these scripts of India are very much important. It's very hard to call them a minority when so much people are concerned and using this script and languages. So let's go back to the Odia script. The Odia is a syllabary. It is working with independent vowels, consonant-dependent vowels that are switching into marks and other signs. So all of this are combining together, following rules and exceptions, and which means that the typeface is a dynamic one. the typeface, the system is a dynamic one. It just means that some reordering is happening, some mark positioning is also happening, and substitution as well. Here I'm showing you a screenshot of newspapers. This article was published in 2014, and it talks about lack of compatibilities, which means that in still many occurrences in India, you get a text that is not Unicode compatible. That means that you are locked within one typeface. So this sort of typeface are legacy typeface. They are not Unicode based. They are hard-coded, which means that once a text is typeset within one environment, you cannot switch to another typeface. This is a huge problem, and this affects also content directly. If a typeface is not available anymore, I don't know, a text is just simply not available. It is a huge problem. So there are some workarounds that I want to show you, but I wouldn't say it's ideal, but in the meantime, they do work. Here I'm showing you, for example, a converter for the Akruti Sarala. Akruti Sarala is a legacy font for the Odia script. And I'm also showing you a video demonstrating how the Kruti Devanagari is also hard-coded, and how basically these typefaces are built inside Latin cells. So when you try to use another typeface, like here, Circular Devanagari, designed by Erin McLaughlin, you just don't see the text. You are locked within the Kruti environment. So I'm gonna copy this text and go online to the Kruti dev converter. So that converts the Kruti into Unicode, which is a Unicode, to Mango, which is a Unicode font developed by Microsoft. And here I can go back to InDesign and copy my text. Of course, if I stay in Kruti, that doesn't work. Kruti doesn't understand Devanagari, although it's a Devanagari font. I still have to turn on the Adobe World Ready Composer to allow the dynamic of the font. Kruti doesn't react to this plugin because, of course, it's not a smart font. It's a font set in stone, let's say. And here I'm comparing very quickly a visual check how things are looking, if the converter worked well. Yeah, so far so good. The mark positioning is actually better in Circular than in Kruti, so everything is fine. We converted the text. So yeah, this is just the situation still at the moment in India. So of course, any sort of initiative towards better font is usually appreciated, and Notosan is one of these initiatives to provide beautiful and free font for all languages. During the development of this family, of this font family, the Notosan Odia font family, was closely working with Rainer and Georg, so the Glyphs team, and our collaboration was very useful. That was feeding my research, and at the same time, I would give them information to improve the automation of Glyphs itself. So if now a designer wants to develop an Odia font, things have been greatly simplified within the font editor Glyphs. And yeah, it's just like a little helper, basically. Oops, I went back. So yeah, when you start a font within Glyphs 3, that's what you see now. You can select your script by picking this small icon, and you can just choose to generate all these predefined glyphs. So that's what you see once you create a new font. That was actually the first step of my work when I started the project developing the character list. So how big my character list is going to be, since it's a syllabary, a lot of things have to be decided from maybe not the beginning, but at the very start. And I must say that I've been working on this encoding on this character list from the beginning of the project to the very end. At least now we have a stable starting list on glyphs, and yeah, so it all starts with empty glyphs. To define all my glyphs list, more specifically the conjunct list, I've been comparing other fonts. So the study and the research with other fonts was very important to me and helped me a lot understanding exactly what is working and what is not working with Odia fonts in general. So let's look a little bit at the dynamic of an Odia font. Here I'm showing you some combination between consonant and vowel. So on the first line, we have the consonant K followed by the vowel A. Very straightforward, what you type is what you get. On the second line, you have still the consonant K followed by the vowel E. In this situation, there is a substitution happening, and the E is turned into this bow and is positioned above the consonant. On the last line, we have the consonant K followed by the vowel U. In this situation, the U is turned into this loopy below mark attached to the glyph. So those are just what I usually call the ligatures. So a combination between a consonant and a vowel. And now let's look at the conjunct. So the combination between 2 consonants, 3 consonants. It can be bigger than 2. On the first line, we have the consonant K followed by the halent. The halent is this little hyphen which is in between and tells the font, okay, now you have to merge the glyph before and the glyph after. So that's the conjunct maker. The second consonant on the first line is Ra. The Ra is a special letter in general within Indic script. It's creating, so when it's following a consonant, it does create a conjunct, but those conjuncts are a little bit apart. They're a little bit special and they obey to their own logic. So here for the Odia script, the Ra is this underline. We can see how that works on the other consonant of the system in order to create something flexible and fitting all the possibilities we developed with Sol, a smart component. So the Ra could be attached, elongated, shortened according to the consonant above. So, but how do you turn on basically this Ra conjunct? You have to turn on the below base form. That's the first feature, which is turning the Ra into this underline. And the conjunct form is showing the way to the pre-composed glyph. Here we have created a lot of pre-composition just to make sure that the rendering will be correct. instead of having some shaping on the fly. And having also pre-composed glyph is helping us defining a little bit better the design. Those are the two features triggered by this RA conjunct. So we've seen the RA conjuncts. Let's now see the other ones that are working with subscript. So here, this is a conjunct of the consonant ka followed by the consonant cha. Now the design is very much different. The conjunct is built on a vertical axis. You have to learn this translation, this grammar, otherwise you wouldn't understand necessarily which glyph is what. And here on the last line, I'm showing you what sort of conjunct could be done with 3 different consonants. So here we have the ktra conjunct, which is made of ka, ta, and ha. So in order to fully also understand, I've already shown you some conjunct, but to really understand what was going on, I had to go deep inside existing font. Here I'm using Nirmala UI, and I was trying to decipher basically myself what exactly are these conjunct. That was a great learning experience, not to, trying to find out by myself the design and what all these conjunct mean. And in order to build then the conjunct within Notos and Odia, so of course I took inspiration from Nirmala UI, which is to build a shorter version of all the consonants. So all my consonants have a base version, which is a shorter version, flying above the baseline. And the conjuncts are then built with this below shape, which has a subscript. And because everything is a little bit shorter, everything fits nicely together. So let's see how that works. Here I have the conjunct fa and ta, different sort of ta. I'm turning some features on. So the below base form again, which is turning the consonant into the base or the below shape, depending on their position. And then the conjunct form, so which is again pointing towards the precomposed glyphs. Yeah. So another situation. So here we have a double la conjunct in between the Highland sign always. Here we have the na followed by the da. We're gonna turn again the same feature, which is turning again to the base and below forms of the consonant. So let's go back to it, yeah. And now let's turn on the conjunct. But here we see some sort of exceptions. So yeah, you cannot, like I said earlier, you cannot, you have to learn this shape because that's not something you can recognize by only learning the full consonant shapes. Odia is full of exceptions. For example, here I'm highlighting how the ta below has 2 different sort of shapes. And exception went on, and that was, for example, a big headache for me at the beginning. That was a curious case of the ba, va, and wa. That's how I called it. When I was printing out some test sheets with conjunct and other fonts, I would not necessarily get the same results. And I was very confused about the va conjunct, va in a second position. Conjunct. Yeah, that was very random. Sometimes I would get a small bar shape. Sometimes that was just like all over the place. I couldn't actually make sense of it. I needed help. I used a Unicode Slack group to ask for help, and Shubhashish Panigrahi is working in the Odisha state for Wikipedia. Is on the Slack group and was helping me a lot, understanding exactly what's going on with these 3 different glyphs, because they were seemingly pointing to the same sort of result without being the same. So I really needed a little bit of assistance. And yeah, eventually I understood that the va and the wa are basically pointing towards the same sort of conjunct. So va is only it's a modern letter, and it's used for loan words in the Odisha language, when wa is the original one, but they both are pointing to the same conjuncts. That's the sort of rules that are not necessarily explained anywhere, so it's good to share them so people do not get stuck on those issues like I was. So here, a small video to show you how those are working, just to make it very clear. I am turning on the below base, and you see that the va with a little dot inside and the wa, the last letter, are actually pointing to the same end result. The result of the first conjunct is not properly shaping because the mark positioning is not active within the glyph environment. But since we are talking about mark positioning, we also went through the anchor definition with Georg and Rainer, and it just for the Odia script wanted really only 4 different sort of anchor. One for the top, which is going to be center, another one for the top right, one for the bottom for everything that is going to be attached to the letter for the marks below, and another one for the ra, because ra was a smart component. The nukta didn't get any anchor because the nukta doesn't exist on all the glyphs of the Odia script like it does, for example, in Devanagari. The nukta only appears on 2 glyphs. So this is one of the features that is not being automatically generated because it's some sort of optional decision. But let's go back to some exceptions. So yeah, we talked about the bilota that could be like a chevron shape or a rounded below subscript. So here I'm showing some more by tapping K and the I matra, because here we can see that it could be very confusing. The grammar, the stylistic grammar of Odia could be very hard to work with, because some glyphs are definitely not the same, but they are ending up being very similar. So in the first position, we have 2 consonants together, which is a combination of ta and ka. And in the second occurrence, you have a combination of a consonant and a vowel, which is completely different. But let's see a little bit how that works within InDesign, because that's also a great way of testing fonts using the user program directly. So some more exception with the I matra, this little arch floating above the consonant. And when I turn the Adobe Word Ready Composer, we can see that some are being position centered, but some are switching to this little chevron shape. So yeah, there was a lot of exceptions inside the Odia script. There is also one little thing I would like to talk about is the depth of conjuncts. This is a usual typical problems for index scripts. Conjuncts are usually shaped on a vertical axis. That's very much the case for Bengali too, for instance, and Odia as well with the subscript. So a conjunct allows also the positioning of a below mark, which makes things very deep at the end. And that can be a potential problem for typesetting, but also for clipping. If the conjunct becomes way too deep with maybe a 3-part conjunct and a below mark, then it's just it's too deep. Knowing that the environment of Notosan is mainly digital, I decided to implement these features for the deep conjunct. So the deep conjuncts are going to be decomposed as soon as a below mark is going to sit under. So here, that's what the feature is saying, that basically every time a below mark is following a conjunct, then it has to be decomposed. And then we implemented a list of glyphs that are exempted from this rule, because sometimes it's nevertheless possible to position these vowel marks below when the conjunct is built on a more horizontal axis. And then, to finish with, we have created another below base form to have all this exception written within the font, because like I said, Odia has a lot of exceptions. In the testing stage, I've been working a lot with Georg actually, and he gave me this really great trick to work with InDesign and to switch the typeface to outline. That's a way to see exactly what you see. So is it a conjunct? Is it built on the fly? What's going on? That's a very clear way to see basically the production behind. And I was still comparing the results I was getting with Noto, with Nirmala and Kalinga. So Kalinga is again the Microsoft font, which is very solid. So again, some test sheets from InDesign. So yeah, if you'd like to start your Odia font, you're more than welcome to do so. You can definitely use Glyphs, and you will see that now a lot of the features are being automated. I hope that I will be able to write down all this information I've shared with you, and hopefully I'll be able to have them published online as a reference. So yeah, I would like to thank you for your attention. And if you have any question, you're more than welcome to ask them. Thank you.
Woo!
It started again. Oh, hi. It's a little bit dark. So... I'm sorry.
Oh, it's good. Wow. Woo. So yeah, if you were unfamiliar with how index script font engineering works, that probably was overwhelming for you, and now you have a lot more appreciation for all the work that goes into that. Sure. Thanks so much, Amélie, for sharing that. Yeah, I'm going to start with the Q&A, the questions that were asked in the chat. Craig had a question regarding non-Unicode Odia fonts. do some phones install such fonts, or are there specific phone apps using Qt or other font encodings, or are they all like Unicode? You know?
I'm not sure because phone environments are completely specific. And I remember when I was working at Dalton Mag, we worked also for Nokia, and the fonts were completely, I mean, they're not for the mainstream usage. So I cannot really say because every phone will have their specific environment, etc. But the thing is that just with normal desktop computer, you will run into this problem that, yeah, you have a text or you have a book, you have your InDesign document or whichever document with a book in, and the font is just wrong, and you cannot basically print this book. I had this friend here in Berlin publishing books in, I think that was in Tamil, but the problem was exactly the same. She didn't have the right font, so basically she couldn't print the book again. And that's happening, with desktop for sure. For phone, I don't know. That's another that's too specific, so I cannot really say. But definitely India needs more Unicode font. That's for sure. I keep saying the same thing over and over, but I mean, yeah, it takes time.
That's great. Let's see. We have another question from Ali. What is the reading direction of Odia? Is it right to left or left to right?
I haven't said. It's left to right. So like Latin.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Fadil said, so he said, interesting. Should the keyboard have an independent input for dependent vowels? Why? So in your slides, in one of those equations, you had like, I think it was ka plus, and it was the a matra equals that. I think it was just a mistake on the slide, but that's a good question. Should keyboards have independent vowels as something you can press?
Yeah, that's a good question, because if you look at the keyboard I'm using, I just realized that when I was doing the conference that I'm actually using the dependent vowels. So the dependent vowels are directly inside the keyboard. You don't really see the independent vowels. So it seems that the Odia keyboard layout is not built like, for example, the Devanagari keyboard, which will have actually, well, there's also different sort of keyboards. I'm just using, I'm afraid to touch anything. I was using the Odia, just regular keyboard on Mac. I believe there's also like different sort of keyboard. That's a huge other topic. But the one I've been using is actually having this dependent vowel directly as keys.
Yes. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that is an interesting point, that there are many different types of keyboard layouts. It hasn't been like standardized universally yet.
No, not at all.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, another question. Oh my, how long did this project take?
That was a short project at the end regarding the amount of work, but we were two working on the project for all the design part, which was the biggest part of the project. The production was just towards the end, and the production was repeated in all the styles of the font. So the work had to be done only once, and the design had to be done much more times. But yeah, we started in May, I think, and we finished in November.
Wow.
2019. Okay. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of work in a short amount of time.
Yeah,
I think. Let's see, another question here. At the start of the project like this, how do you familiarize yourself with the shapes of a language that you do not speak? Do you create flashcards to learn letters?
No, but I've learned the letters. Yeah, I just read a lot. With Sol, we found some different documents online explaining us different yeah, how the letters are constructed, and we just like spent a lot of time before actually starting the project. So that was ahead of May. So when we started, we already had a good idea of what was going on. But yeah, we spent a lot of time reading about it and looking. I think just visual education is very important. The more you see, the more you're familiar with, and that's where that's how I've been developing index scripts I'm not using myself. It's because I'm looking at them over and over, and at one time I can understand better. I mean, I'm not the specialist, of course, but I have a little understanding of what's going on, and I feel comfortable enough to design them afterwards. But studying also typefaces is very useful. And I've been showing in my presentation the typeface Lohit or Nirmala or Kalinga or Balu also in Oriya. And with Sol, we've been looking at this font over and over and comparing and looking at proportions, because a sign also is always obeying to the same basic rules. So there's a X and Y axis, and it's going to be black and white. And yeah, you have a space and you have to design a sign within. And so there is also this very basic language underlying every script. And then by studying other fonts, by looking at books, by looking at things online also, see what's the rhythmic of the script. It's also very important. Then you get a grip, basically, of the script itself.
That's great. And how you showed Subhashish was drawing that handwritten stuff and like gave insight to it that you.
Oh, that's
otherwise
my stuff. That's my handwriting. Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah, because I think it's very good to try also to appropriate yourself, even though, okay, I don't understand the words and I cannot speak in Odia. I can nevertheless try to understand how that works, basically. So I don't see any limitations there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great answer. Let's see, a bit off topic, but I'm working on researching Tamil typefaces and would love to know more about the problems your friend found with the Tamil book project. Let's see, we can get you connected with her. She's a writing student.
Yeah.
So
no problem.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah.
It's great. Okay, let's see, another question. Unicode CLDR is collecting keyboard layouts, so they might be implemented before or implemented more easily in additional platforms. Thank you, Craig. We've got a link for that now.
Cool.
That's good to know. All right, Bobby says, is there a plan to have a Noto serif Odia?
I don't know.
Or other
I don't know, but Dave? Marek is here. I've seen Marek is in the audience. Maybe Marek can say something. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm going to guess yes eventually, and that's another interesting question with all these scripts like that started with a sans version first, which might, who knows how appropriate that is. Saul asks, did you collaborate with designers who are Odia native?
Yeah, we actually used a lot this Unicode Slack, so I was only talking about Subhashish, but we also worked with Pratiyush Das and Nassim Ali. Nassim is actually a doctor, but passionate about Odia script, and he wants to promote it, and it was great. And Pratush is a designer himself, and he was our design consultant, actually. So Pratush was helping me just for this specific curious case. But yeah, we were also in touch with other people.
Great. Right. So let's see, Fadil asks, so the font will not actually automate a ligature of consonants plus independent vowel? That's just a demo? Oh, no, yeah, that's written in the features, yeah, that she's done. It'll consonants plus independent vowel.
Yeah, no, okay. Yeah, it does do the, yeah, basically everything is coded inside the features, and you can, when you type your independent glyphs, they're gonna connect and create either way conjuncts or ligatures, like I call them.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, another question from Eben. What kinds of typography did you have especially in mind for this design?
It has to be basically like the challenge with this design, maybe I can answer like this, was to add many widths to the design. And that's something that hasn't necessarily been developed with the Odia script. So we had we had 3 different widths. And that's something that we had to manage. That wasn't necessarily very easy. We thought that actually the very wide glyph would be tricky to design, but it appeared to be actually the opposite. The very wide were easier than the very tight. And but the typography, I was also, when we were designing, we were comparing a lot with the Bengali and the Devanagari, not only with the Latin, because we thought that after all these scripts are living together, these Indic scripts, and it was very important also to connect all of them together. And of course, we were only looking at the sans collection, not the serif.
All right. Next question. In your research, did you see any examples of a higher contrast style of font use?
Yeah, of course. There are a lot of, there are some contrasted font, but it's mixed. You can have some contrasted, you can have some monoline, and our design had to be monoline. That was the scope.
Good. Could you please talk a little bit about how the project was funded?
The project was funded by Google. We were commissioned directly by Google to develop it, knowing that at the end of the work, the font will be then open source and published on GitHub. So the files are available. Everybody can have a look inside and use them as they want. And if there are corrections to be done, that is also no problem. I think on GitHub, one can just participate and fork the design and do modification. It's completely allowed. And what we've done is just the basic canvas, let's say. And if there are some correction to be added, it's possible. So it's not a finished project, let's say.
Good to keep in mind. It's infinite. So Eben asked a little clarification. He just wanted to know, like, what use cases do you want to see this font applied to?
Well, I thought that Noto-san will be mostly used within maybe phone environment or desktop. And that's also why I thought, okay, your space is constrained within this digital environment, and you don't want to have this very deep conjunct basically clashing into the next line. And I think that's a little bit my opinion, but I think it's completely okay to break conjunct down. I know some other people do not share the same point of view, but I've seen it in India. I've seen it in airport signage that conjuncts are being broken because sometimes the constraint is too high, and it doesn't forbid the understanding of the conjunct itself. So I don't see any problem there. And that's a little bit, that's not a design, I don't know, is it a design decision? That's a production decision, I would say, to break down these conjuncts and to make sure that they will work perfectly in a digital environment with limited line space.
Yeah. That's a good point. Let's see. Bobby wrote us a question. It's about a specific part of the script. I used your font to make a font that supported Odia, sign, overline. We'll get you connected. It might be too technically advanced for this conversation, but you guys should get connected. I think
Okay.
I think one of the themes of this is that it's like all of this work that you did. What year was this? This was just like 2 years ago or something, right? Is that true?
Yeah. It was in 2019. Yeah.
Yeah. So like we're still at the very beginning of, for many scripts, of just breaking things down and trying to figure out the best way, best way to build things. Yeah. Could you talk more about that? Like your relationship with the Glyphs team, and like how did you? Yeah, I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, exactly, because the project had to be developed within Glyphs, and as much as, I mean, we thought, oh yeah, that would be great to use the automation, but no, the automation is not perfect, and then we had to make so much exception. At the end, it was a little bit counterproductive, knowing that Georg Seifert is actually living also in Berlin, and Rainer was coming over quite often. So at the end, it was actually quite, it was great actually to be able to work with them both directly and be able to reshape a little bit the font editor itself, which means that for the next steps, for the next fonts, things are going to be just a little bit clearer. And step by step, I mean, other people are invited, of course, to design this script. And if there are issues in the automation, one should bring them forward to Georg and Rainer, and things will get better and better. And hopefully it will become easy to design this sort of font. That's basically the goal. And yeah, it was good to try to use our experience with Sol, not as a one-shot, but also as something that could be useful for others. So that was this transmission of knowledge that was also quite interesting for us. We didn't want to just... So we understood the project in a very wide open source way. So the final fonts are open source, but we wanted also to have this sharing of knowledge regarding the production of things, which was very cryptic at the beginning. So it was a lot of work to try to understand. It was a lot of headache, but Georg and Rainer were super helpful, figuring things out with me and finding way to implement features. So that was great.
Brilliant. That is excellent to hear. Yeah. Yay, open source. Okay. I think we have time for like one last question. We're almost at the end of our time. John asks, there was an earlier version of Nodo Sans Odia. What was the reason for developing this new version independently?
That's a reason. I mean, that's more a question to Google itself, I think. But as far as I understood, it was an open source problem where I think Monotype has some very strict rules about what is open source and what is not. And I believe there was some conflict, but I'm not the one to answer. I don't want to say stuff that are bigger than me. Sorry. But that was just like something like that. So it wasn't about the design. It wasn't about the production. It was much more about legal stuff, from what I understood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That echoes something I heard Dave say in a different talk too about, what is considered a source file or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So there was a problem of source file, from what I understood. And yeah, at the end of the day, it's a contract problem. So not really understanding the terms the same way and ending up with a dead end at the end of the project.
Yes. Okay, with our 2 remaining minutes, maybe I'll ask you your advice, like for someone who's interested in working on Nodo projects or open source or just other world scripts in general. do you have advice for where they should go to try to learn about this or contribute, or any advice for people watching?
Well, I think the Unicode Slack that you initiated actually is great. There's a lot of information there, and there's also a big pool of people. So if you want to ask a question, maybe someone will answer. Maybe you have to be patient a little bit, but in general, it's very active, and it's a great place to start. And then, yeah, I mean, going to a library is always good if you have this available around you. Otherwise, you have the British Library available online. Some of the documents you can consult online. And then also what you can also try to learn the language. I've tried, I failed. But you can, yeah, it's always good to try. I mean, it's also good to fail. But I have a ton of grammar books about Devanagari and such, but also some other books on how to write a script. So all these primer are really good. And also school books, how kids are learning, that's also a good reference. There's so many things actually. But one specific thing, yeah, I don't know.
That's great. That's good.
Yeah.
Maybe
Fiona Ross would be the one to go to actually, because she's the one behind. She's our mentor basically.
Agreed. Very good. And with that, yeah, I think that's the end of the session. If anyone wants to enter the Hangout room and talk and ask more questions of Amélie. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Amélie.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for all your questions and your attention. And yeah, if you have any questions, you know where to reach me.
Great. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye.